In Peru, popular mobilizations continue to demand the definitive resignation of Dina Boluarte while denouncing new acts of police repression. Ecuador entered into electoral silence starting Friday after organizations closed their different campaigns ahead of the sectional elections and constitutional referendum to be held on Sunday. And Pope Francis urges the South Sudan's leaders to stop the mutual accusations and to fulfill the promises made in the peace agreements. Hello, welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the South. In Peru, popular mobilizations continue to demand the definitive resignation of Dina Boluarte while denouncing new acts of police repression. The departments of Arequipa, Puno, and Cusco are the first to take to the streets in response to the strike called by the General Workers' Confederation. The demonstrators rejected the accusations of some authorities that they are being manipulated and financed by narco-terrorist organizations. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro has called for a review of mining legislation as the current one does not sufficiently take into account environmental protection and cannot address the participation of armed groups in the activity. Colombian army and police operate in the region's jungle area with the mission of destroying the machinery at which illegal mining is carried out at a high environmental cost. According to a 2021 United Nations report, illegal mining directly caused the destruction of more than 640 square kilometers of vegetation in Colombia, even though the country has been pursuing this kind of illegal mining since 2012. Ecuador entered into electoral silence after organizations closed their different campaigns ahead of the sectional elections and constitutional referendum on Sunday. The National Electoral Council announced that from this day on, the diffusion of any type of information or publicity that induces voters to take positions or preferences are forbidden. The institution also pointed out there will be sanctions in case of rallies, meetings, or any other act or program of an electoral nature, as established in the Ecuadorian Electoral Code. Lastly, the National Electoral Council stated that home voting is available for those who are unable to travel to the polling stations. The government of Argentina announced on Friday a new stage of the Fair Prices program, which includes over 49,000 products manufactured by 482 companies. The program aims at keeping the prices of at least 2,000 widely used products to try and bring monthly inflation to a 4% from the Kirchner Cultural Center, accompanied by the Secretary of Commerce, Matias Tombolini, and by the President of the Coordinator of Food Products Industries and of the Argentine Industrial Union, Daniel Funes de Rioja. Besides other officials and businessmen, Economy Minister Sergio Massa announced that the application of the Prices program will be extended until June next. A Florida state court in the United States said that the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was planned in the U.S. and financed by a Haitian-American politician and pastor. The statement was part of an indictment, and the court is preparing against the 2 Colombians and 3 Haitians arrested for the crime. According to the document, Haitian-American James Solange and others prepared the attack in Florida with the intention of bringing about regime change in the Caribbean country and supporting the rise to power of Haitian-American Christian Sanong, a pastor, doctor, and politician who was also implicated in the conspiracy. The arrested were transferred to the U.S., where they will be tried in a district court of the state of Florida on charges of illicit association and criminal conspiracy to assassinate a president. A Cuban researcher managed to develop a more environmentally friendly production alternative for cement with the support of the Swiss Cooperation Program in the Caribbean island. Our correspondent, Lisandra Andres, has more.
This is one of the projects that takes up the time of Cuban conceptual artist Wilfredo Prieto, Viaje Infinito, or Infinite Trip, a road in the shape of the number 8 with which he will transform an intricate area in the center of Cuba into a space dedicated to art, culture, and nature. The artist told teleSUR that this 4-lane and 1-kilometer-wide highway in the middle of nowhere has the added bonus of being a project where art is mixed with science. The cement used to build the road is the result of a research made by a group of Cuban scientists. It is cheap, resistant, and environmentally friendly.
We have done this project in very special conditions during a pandemic and with economic difficulties. So we have looked for totally different alternatives. It has been a project of innovation, creative and scientific, and everything has begun to come together. We found this project in the Central University of Las Villas, and we immediately connected with it.
The LC3, the cement used by Wilfredo in his project, comes from this plant at Las Villas Marta Abreu Central University. It is the first of its kind in the world to manufacture this low-carbon material. Its secret is a drastic reduction of clinker, cement's main raw material, and the largest source of carbon released into the atmosphere during its manufacture.
We are dramatically reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. The reduction values are between 40 and 50%, but at the same time, we do it without compromising the product performance. That means that we are making a cement that is better than the cements that are being produced now, more durable. In the case of Cuba, it is a cement that is more resistant to corrosion.
Those involved in the project expect the LC3 to account for 40% of the national production, with a strong support by local industries.
One of the pillars of local development is a local economic and ecological development under a green economy, as it can be called. And this project to reduce pollution through the production of cement is one of the solutions for local development in Cuba.
Countries in Latin America and other parts of the world have already begun to apply Cuban technology for cement production, while others are interested in installing mini plants like this one at Las Villas Central University.
The Colombian company Argos set up in 2019 a plant with a capacity of 5,000 tons per day. At this moment, they have produced more than 2 million tons of this type of cement, and there are many companies throughout Latin America, in Mexico, in the United States, which are also in the process of investment and assembly. The same happens in Africa, where we are cooperating with the assembly of a plant in the Ivory Coast.
One of the first projects where LC3 will be used is the reconstruction of the Havana Malecón due to its highly resistant properties in seawalls.
It completely prevents corrosion due to its characteristics. We have a natural exposure site in Cayo Santa Maria where we have had pieces placed on the beach for 10 years now, and in the steel is intact.
The experts affirm that in spite of LC3's proven results, the new product faces the challenge of conquering the Cuban and world industries for its production on a commercial scale, a phase that is beginning its first steps in the Caribbean island.
Lisandra Andrés, teleSUR, La Habana, Cuba.
We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this, and also don't forget to follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English for more. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Bolivian government intends to recover dialogue with Europe in the celebration of the European Union CELAC summit to be held in Brussels in July. The Chancellor of Bolivia visiting Spain foresees that the new summit will serve to make possible economic articulations in terms of complementary between the blocs. The diplomat declared that the Union will also be part of the CELAC. And moving on, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken canceled on Friday a trip to Beijing after a new flare-up of bilateral tensions over the accidental entry of a Chinese research balloon on the U.S. national airspace. Blinken was scheduled to leave Thursday afternoon in Beijing on a trip planned after the U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping met last November during the Group 20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. The Chinese government regretted the accidental passage through the U.S. airspace of the aforementioned balloon and clarified that it was a domestic civilian aircraft used for meteorological studies. China also confirmed that it has always complied with international laws and has no intention of violating the territory or airspace of any sovereign state. And moving on, specialists in the United States on Thursday plan to send U.S. contractors to Ukraine to help with battlefield repairs, despite the country's allegations of not being part of the armed conflict. The project, called Trident Support, is scheduled to be launched in March. It will involve hiring up to 200 experienced contractors who will be deployed across Ukrainian territory. They are then supposed to integrate into small units near the front lines and teach Ukrainian troops how to repair their equipment without sending it out of the country. Moscow has repeatedly insisted that arms shipments to Ukraine make NATO countries direct participants in the conflict and warned that all weapons supplied to Ukraine by the West, as well as foreign military personnel handling them, are legitimate targets of the Russian armed forces. Much of Canada woke up on Friday to an extreme cold warning caused by a 3,000-kilometer polar air front. Canada's Meteorological Service warned that Friday and Saturday temperatures will drop to around minus 30 degrees Celsius in most of the country, with a wind chill of minus 40 degrees Celsius. Authorities advised limiting the time spent outdoors because of the risk of frostbite. And moving on, Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced on Friday that he will propose declaring the tourist lands that have not yet been given acquisition as protected natural areas. In his daily morning press conference, the president indicated that his government is studying a decision related to the National Fund for the Promotion of Tourism. He explained that there are close to 10,000 hectares in areas such as southern Baja California, the bays of Huatulco, Quintana Roo, or Playa Espiritu that need state protection to guarantee public access to them. For the reason, he stated that he's considering designating these zones as natural protected areas to safeguard the nation's patrimony and stop any possible privatization in the future. He also criticized past administrations for concessioning tourist areas and regretted that the nation lacks public beaches. We're taking our last break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at teleSUR for more. Stay with us. Welcome back. After his arrival in South Sudan, Pope Francis urged the country's leaders to stop the mutual accusations and to fulfill the promises made in the peace agreements. During his speech, the pontiff urged the people of South Sudan to regenerate social life and take decisive steps towards the deployment of the country. He also lamented the years of conflicts that have generated violent confrontations and more than 400,000 deaths, in spite of the peace agreements signed between the parties. And as Pope Francis began a 3-day visit to South Sudan, he urged on Friday the leaders of the violence-wrecked country to make a new start for peace, warning that history would remember them for their actions.
No more bloodshed, no more conflicts, no more violence and mutual recriminations about who is responsible for it. No more leaving your people athirst for peace. No more destruction. It is time to build. Leave the time of war behind and let a time of peace dawn.
si getti alle spalle il tempo della guerra, illustri autorità, i vostri figli.
Dear authorities, those sons and daughters and history itself will remember you if you work for the benefit of these people that you have been called to serve. Future generations will either venerate your names or cancel their memory based on what you now do.
La memoria dei vostri nomi in base a quanto fate ora.
Pakistan will have to accept the conditions set by the International Monetary Fund in order to unlock an indispensable financial assistance. Speaking on national TV, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that given the dire economic situation in the country, they are forced to abide by the conditions set by the IMF, even if these defy imagination. An IMF delegation arrived in Islamabad on Tuesday to negotiate the payment of a new financial aid package under a program that had been suspended for months. A Saudi Arabian company offered almost $6 million to the Brazilian Navy for the out-of-service aircraft carrier Sao Paulo, which the South American country's government intends to sink in the Atlantic Ocean. Following an announcement made at the beginning of the week by the Brazilian Ministry of Defense, Sela Trading Holding offered a first bid of 30 million reais, equivalent to $5.9 million earlier this week. The Sao Paulo carrier has been rejected by several ports because of toxic materials on its hull. Dozens of Filipino activists protested against a deal that gives the U.S. broad access to key military bases on their territory. The U.S. administration of Joe Biden reached an agreement with the Philippines to grant the United States access to 4 more military bases in the East Asian country. This was reported by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during a visit to the Asian nation on Thursday. In rejection of the agreement, activists demonstrated in front of the Armed Forces headquarters in the capital, Manila, where Austin met his Philippine counterpart Carlito Galvez and denounced the increased U.S. military presence in the country. And on Friday, hundreds of South African demonstrators went out into the streets to express their outrage at the energy crisis that the nation is facing. Africa's most industrialized economy has been crippled by unprecedented power outages in the last year. Last week, the Eskom company announced new failures in generating units that will delay again the country's energy recovery, with severe impact on the population and industrial facilities. On January 30th, the president of South Africa and the African National Congress, Cyril Ramaphosa, announced that the National Executive Committee of his government reached a consensus to declare South Africa's current energy crisis as a national disaster. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also be sure to follow us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.